Howdy, y'all. Joe Hills here, recording as I always do in Nashville, Tennessee. And Cub's here, too. Howdy, Cub.
You hit me, Joe. I'm down. I'm
Oh,
down.
no. I did
That
not
was a good
mean to
shot,
strike
dude.
you. I was
That
just
was
trying
great.
to... Oh, thank you, thank you. So, as you can see, this is all not done yet. There is a lot of room for improvement. But I have the general boundaries around your future labyrinth zone laid in. If you look down here, in between kind of these like parking divider things and that area there, there's this kind of like, I don't know, it's kind of like a semicircle, not a semicircle, a third or a fourth of a circle. You know what I mean?
It's basically like this little. It's almost like a rhombus shape, but with the curve on one side.
Yeah,
Right?
it's
This area.
it's
Okay.
like triangular. Yeah, maybe let's fly back over here. So
Okay.
yeah, it's this. It's everything inside of here. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, that's what I was looking at. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just double checking. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's up to you to some degree to determine, since you're the first one, you can kind of figure out where you want the entrance of your labyrinth to be and where you want the exit to be.
Okay.
Ideally, I was thinking we would possibly set these up so players or people who explore this have the option of chaining into the next labyrinth. So if your exit was over here, that might be best. And so then people can have the option of either entering the main building, which I haven't laid in yet, down this road, or entering the second labyrinth zone, which we also haven't laid in yet.
Gotcha.
But
Now, can I ask Joe? As far as like the height you're gonna do this at, is it gonna be at this level or one block above? Because it looks like you have like some stuff placed down, like this grass here. And stuff.
yeah, so basically because the roads are gravel, I was going to basically be putting some netherrack down here and then putting gravel on top of it. So the actual like Y level, that's the baseline here, is 64. But there's nothing stopping you from going lower if you want, right?
Yeah.
But this way, you can just put in whatever floor you want on top of the ice, and you don't have to pull out the ice if you don't want to, if you're happy with this Y level.
Okay. Yeah. I think probably going on top would be preferable.
I figured as much, yeah. So I tried to get a lot of this down to 63, so that way you don't have to worry about this grass or dirt. You're going to cover it with whatever your floor material is anyway. But
yeah, this is perfect. This is perfect. Is there any sort of like recommended aesthetic, especially like for the edges? Like, you want me to like build up? Like say if I don't cover the whole space, is there like anything like you'd prefer to have filling in like any like empty space?
Honestly, what I've been trying to do here is just kind of create a canvas for people to figure out what to do themselves. I want to give as little editorial direction as possible. You know, I'm showing you where the edges of the canvas are, where the surface is, but really there's no height restriction, there's no theme restriction, you know. Like I said, ideally we want these 6 different parking lot experiences to be linear such that they can chain into each other. So really the only hard and fast thing would be have the exit there and then don't extend past the frog lights or the sandstone in any given direction.
Okay, so exit over there, and then entrance. Is there a similar spot for the entrance, like on the other side over here somewhere?
There's not a obvious spot necessarily. There is a parking lot entrance on the original diagram that's going to be around here. But if you were like, you know, it would work better if we used one of the other entrances along the Belt Road. So, like, basically, if you followed this, there's another entrance down there. If you'd rather build from that side and have people go that way, that's fine. It's kind of up to you. There's more access points, kind of the way the road system works, than there are necessarily logical entrances for a labyrinth. Although, I guess a labyrinth can have multiple entrances as long as they connect to the same exit. Or they all winnow down.
Yeah.
So it's kind of up to you. So you could have, like, easy, medium, and hard entrances or whatever.
Right.
And you don't have to maintain the gravel road aesthetic once we get into the labyrinth. I just kind of extended this a little bit here.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think maybe I could transition it to another thing. Like that might work. Like it sort of trails off and you just find yourself suddenly inside the labyrinth. Could be kind of cool.
Yeah, whatever you think is best.
Yeah, if I can fill this whole space, it would be pretty impressive, I think.
Yeah.
Just one small segment of this, and we had other people doing the same thing. Oh man, that'd
Mhm.
be cool.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see how it all comes together because this is a project where I know that the second that people start building, it's going to go off the rails. Nothing in my head is going to match what actually happens, and that's the most exciting part for me. So I'm just trying to get all the canvas built, like I said, and then you're the first person I'm inviting in to start working on stuff just so that people can have something here to kind of spark the imagination, when we do the grand opening.
Yeah, yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. Thanks, Joe. See you soon.
Bye. Welcome to the Nether. I've got 1/8 scale. I've been putting lots of thought into this oval. Yeah, as I've been making progress on this oval in the oval world, I started putting some thought into what I want to use as the material for the building in the center. I kind of put cobblestone on the map version of it here as like a placeholder, but as I'm realizing that packed ice is going to be what I want to make it out of in the overworld, I thought maybe I'll just swap this out here now, right? Like, let's just put some packed ice in the nether. What could go wrong, right? I don't think we'll have a bunch of mobs spawn as long as I leave the slabs up here in the place, and then I think it'll be okay. It's a minor improvement, but I think it's an improvement. A lot of stuff on HermitCraft is just about small iterations over time, and this is just a small improvement on this map, and, okay. Let's keep going. We got more to do. Next problem. Cub Fans Labyrinth is well underway. Look at this. This is looking fantastic. We'll have to have Cub show that to us later. In the meantime, I've started putting in this retaining wall here, and our ice tray way off in the distance over there has generated about half of the 11 shulkers of ice. I say that. Technically, we need 99 shulkers of ice. We need 11 shulkers of packed ice to start on the walls of the building here. I was just over here looking at Rendog's big fancy beacon shop when I realized, maybe what my ice tray needs is not beacons, but auto crafters. Now, to actually set up a proper auto crafting system for our packed ice, we're going to need to ascend these stairs like Rocky Balboa. We have to be like an Italian stallion, a Mediterranean horse, if you will, and climb all of these steps to reach the entrance of TangoTek's vaunted Redstone shop. Oh, we made it. Okay, so let's see what we got inside here. We got potted plants. Well, it's not really a plant yet. Maybe one day. Do we have anything we can put in there in the meantime? We do not. Okay, what about... Ooh, what's this thing? We've got compasses that spin. You normally want the needle to always point the same way, which actually this one does. So I guess that's working. Okay. I've never actually been in this shop before, so I don't know how this works. Skulk sensors, shriekers, catalyst coming soon. What's this? Oh, I actually really like that. Is that arrows up there? Okay, so we've got droppers. 3 diamonds for 32 droppers. We've got redstone lamps. We've got targets. Dispensers. Now, we do need droppers to make auto crafters. So, if auto crafters themselves are not for sale, we might need to go ahead and purchase some of that. We also need to buy raw redstone. I'm completely out of redstone dust. This shop is not looking very promising. Okay. So we can buy the droppers. We can buy observers. Ooh, crafters. Okay, so we can buy crafters for 10 diamonds per 32. So, boom. Now we have 32 crafters. Arguably, that's more than we need, but I feel like we'll need at least some redstone dust for this. So, there's got to be a place in here where he sells redstone dust for blocks that's not completely sold out. Is that... Ooh, redstone blocks. Yes, 7 diamonds per 32. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to take one of these. Gonna make some quick change. And bada boom. Okay. So now we have a crafter, a block of redstone. I feel like observers might not be bad to have. So let's maybe get some observers and hoppers as well. 5 diamonds for 32 and 8 diamonds for 32. Okay, so we're going to just quickly sell some of these. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Boom. Okay, this should be all that we really need to make this work. I mean, we're not likely to need, like, comparators or repeaters or anything, are we? It feels like it'd be nice to have some, just in case we need them. Also, maybe let's get some redstone torches, just in case. Just in case. Okay. Droppers and dispensers. Redstone lamps. I feel like those are not quite as high import. But you know what? Target blocks are always really fun. Yeah. Wait, is this thing just randomly killing chickens? Is that what happens? I heard it clucking. So the egg hits the target block, which withdraws, and sometimes a chicken just dies? Oh no. Huh. Well, we'll just let that be. You know, I don't want to get in trouble for defacing Tango's shop the first time I'm here, on camera. Generating evidence of crimes, kids. Not even once. Anyway, let's head on back to our area and see if we can get some sort of packed ice autocrafter going. Time skip! A new day is dawning over our ice tray. And I've got some new stuff set up over here. Look at this log-based storage system. It's logarithmic. We've got our ender chest there. We've got our redstone box here. Let's maybe grab some of these out of there just in case we need them, you know, as a treat. Maybe we might need some of these quartz blocks too. So here's what I've got set up. I've got a series of output chests for the packed ice. I've got the crafters ready to make packed ice. I've got a feeder chest that'll dump the ice into the crafters. So this is feeling pretty good. Now what we don't have is a way to activate these crafters. Now I get the impression that you need some sort of redstone pulse. Boy, none of this stuff will really easily make it. Dang it, I should have tried to buy a button from Tango, apparently. Can we go find a random log over here? Okay, let's make some buttons real quick. So, if we make a couple buttons, I think we can put those on the sides here of this. I mean, it's doing that little animation there. Okay. So each time it gets a redstone pulse, it makes 2 packed ice. If I had to guess, that's because that redstone is conveying through to both of these. So that's good to know. So we don't necessarily need to have some sort of clock connected to both of these. So let's say we set up an observer here. Nope, wrong way. Let's say that we set up an observer here. I want this one to face this way. And then I want this one to face that way? No. What if I come over here more? Okay, so now I think they're both firing intermittently. Which then means that we're getting packed ice dumped into these at a pretty decent rate. Okay, so let's free up some inventory space real quick. We're going to dump all of the redstone stuff back in our redstone box here. That's why we brought it with us, right? And then we've got these beautiful new icebreaker picks. We've got Icebreaker 1, Icebreaker 2, The Breakening, Icebreaker 3, Parabellum, unnamed 4th icebreaker, which was an oversight. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, so let's go name this one. I feel like there should have been a sound effect there. Well, there was a sound effect there, so whatever. So, icebreaker 4, Mesified. Okay. So now we can just grab a bunch of these. Is this not Silk Touch? That's why I didn't name it Icebreaker, because it was the Fortune one. And I don't have the money to rename it. Or the experience. Okay. Okay, we're putting this... This is why we have the Ender Chest here. We're throwing this one straight in the garbage. The Ender Chest garbage. Never mind, we'll come back to that one. It's fine. It's fine. Nobody's deeply upset about this or feels like they could have prepared better. Okay. So in the time it took me to set this up, a lot of ice just naturally retrade over here. This tray over on the left side here is the most awkward of them all because it's super irregular. The other ones are more regular. So, I'm showing you the weird one. You're welcome, America, and viewers from all over the world. If you're, like, lost in an IKEA in Sweden right now, it's okay to take a break from watching this episode to try to seek help. I don't know what the Swedish word for help is, but I played a lot of Vault Hunters, so I should probably look it up. I'm just going to dump all of these up into here. And those are going to keep crafting. And hopefully they won't automatically make ice slabs or something stupid. If they add ice slabs to the game in 1.21 and I just am not in the loop, I'm going to feel so dumb when I end up with like 15 shoulders of ice slabs. Look at all the progress our friend Cub Fan has made on that labyrinth segment there. It's looking really fancy, very exciting, very good. The building looking pretty okay, but there are a few mountains just kind of poking out there. Now, I mean, most hermits aren't going to come stand on a roof and look at that and see those sticking out there, so maybe I don't have to get those all the way down. But, you know, when people come through the portal, we're going to want that to look good. So, I figure I probably have an hour or so of mountaintop removal, which I've heard from West Virginia is not very ecologically sound, but is the sort of thing where it's always better if you bring a friend. So, I have reached out to Joe Mirabello, the creative director of Terrible Posture Games, who I met at PAX way back in the day after he made Tower of Guns, which was one of my favorite roguelike first-person shooters. Actually, arguably the only roguelike first-person shooter I ever played, but also the funniest and best. And as you can hear, we got him here. Woo! Howdy, Joe!
Hello. Hi. How are you, Joe?
I'm doing fantastic. Well, thank you for agreeing to keep me company while I do this mundane task. You know, a big part of HermitCraft is we do large-scale things one piece at a time. But the larger the scale is, the more manageable it is with other people around. So I'm glad you could join us today. So real quick, can you tell us basically a little bit about your kind of voyage as a game designer, game programmer, game artist? Like, you run a studio now, but I don't think that was the case back when you made Tower of Guns. Can you talk a little bit about that?
It was not the case when I made Tower of Guns. So I started Terrible Posture Games almost by accident. I used to work in AAA as a technical artist and as an environment artist.
Oh, I've been pronouncing it, but okay, AAA, got it.
I used to work in back in the day. No, I worked on action RPGs and some MMOs, and I worked on one MMO that was pretty high profile, but was never completed because the company went bankrupt quite disastrously and very publicly. And I figured I could at least do that well. So I started doing my own thing.
You know, this is inspiring already. See, that's the thing, kids, is you too can go bankrupt in an inspiring and exciting visually way. Like, I mean, and they didn't even have Instagram back then the way they have it now. Like, it'll be spectacular when your company goes under.
Oh, I don't think that there's any way you could get more spectacular than spectacular than how that company went out of business. It was 38 Studios, and if you Google it, there's all sorts of exciting stories about it. But
Can you say the name of the game that you were working on at the time?
Sure. I don't remember if it actually had a name. The code name was Copernicus, and it was set in the Amalur world, which there was a game called Reckoning that came out that was also set in that world. It was a really good team of creatives. The writer Bob Salvatore was building a lot of the world. We had Todd McFarlane was actually coming in and moonlighting as art director from time to time. It was pretty exciting. Yeah, it was really exciting to get to meet some of these people that were celebrities. But where there's a lot of celebrities, there's a lot of money and a lot of people. The team was huge, and when the studio went bankrupt, it was kind of like out of nowhere. None of us were really expecting it, and I had been working for 5 years at that studio, going from being just a low-level kind of like not quite junior, but like mid-level artist to being a environment artist, to being a senior environment artist, to being a technical artist, to like running a technical art team of 5 people or so by the end. And when the studio shut down, we'd been working on this MMO that was made to be, it was built by 300 people for tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of concurrent players. I just wanted to work on something that was for one player, by one developer, and that was Tower Guns. I was like, I want to take a sabbatical from AAA and do something small. And I thought it was going to be this little side project, and instead it started being a second career. So I didn't expect Tower Guns to do as well as it did. I was quite happy when it did. It's not like it sold millions and millions and millions of copies, but it was certainly sold more than that MMO did,
That's that's the thing is like you can, a company that works on something for years and then never publishes anything isn't as good kind of by nature as something that one person puts together themselves and actually gets out there for people to experience. Now, not everybody who self-publishes gets the sort of reception you did. Could you say like how many roughly, just ballpark, how many copies of Tower of Guns actually did sell?
So this is going to sound weird, but I actually don't know.
That's fair. I don't look at the analytics on my Twitch and YouTube stuff.
No, it's not because of the analytics. It's because of the history of the game. It gets really wacky when you talk about games that have been around for a long time and had been in bundles. And games that had been on console, and especially when the game had been released on PlayStation, it was part of a PS Plus deal, and it was part of games for what was the plan? I can't remember the name of the plan. There was a games with gold, I think is what it was called. But there was a lot of these different kind of promotions that a lot of people played it via those methods. But at that point, I had help. I was working with a company named Grip Digital. They did all the porting work. But because I was not a PlayStation partner, they couldn't share stats directly for some things with me. Some things they could, some things they couldn't. And so as a result, there were a lot of things where I had, revenue reports, but I couldn't see too much about how many players had actually redeemed the game through things like PlayStation Plus. Which oddly enough now I probably could, because at some point Terrible Posture Games inherited the entire project in publishing Tower Guns on our own, but that was a few years later.
But you could safely say it was tens of thousands of people at least. Is that a rough ballpark?
Millions of people in the end had played it.
Millions of people. Okay, see that's just, order of magnitude. I don't need like a okay. So millions of people.
But yeah, I can't say millions of people bought it, but I could say millions of people played it, which is quite, I feel, exciting just in of itself. I mean, I went into that project expecting maybe, if I were lucky, I would sell a couple thousand copies. Yeah,
well, I mean, that's fantastic to have millions of people experience the game you made, even if they didn't buy it. And I say this as somebody who, I publish my videos for free on the internet, and like some people choose to support it via tipping and Patreon and stuff, but like, I'm doing this because I want to make something that people get to experience and enjoy. And so, I mean, that's cool that so many people got to play your game.
Yeah, I was very excited about it. And then that led to a follow-up game called Mother Gunship, which then led to me starting a company, which now it is more than just me. We've been growing very slowly and steadily for a few years. And we recently worked on a couple of things. We recently did, actually, oddly enough, worked on developing a visual novel set in the Invincible world. Working with Skybound on that. I didn't direct that one on the art side or the writing side, but I was executive producer on it. And then we also released a VR version of Mother Gunship called Mother Gunship Forge, which was, I think, probably one of our best designed games. It was really, really well designed. And I think I can say that humbly because I didn't do a single check-in in it. So I did, but it got reverted.
Well, that's how you know you have a good team. When they're willing to be like, look, Joe, we appreciate what you did to get us this far, but let us cook. Like, we got this, buddy.
Well, the funny thing is that my one check-in from Mother Gunship Forge was like, it was just me doing a joke on the editor splash screen for when people load up when they start their workday. And they had to get reverted because of someone else's check-in, and it got mixed in together. And so it ended up getting undone. But it wasn't even a substantial change to the game, so I was kind of bummed by that. But that's all right. It was fun. But that project is like, if you have a VR headset, I think Forge is a lot of fun, and I learned an awful lot about. Like, I thought I already knew a decent amount about FPS roguelites, but I've learned a lot more after we built that game. So I feel like there's too many lessons that we've picked up on the genre for us not to do more stuff in that space someday.
Well, I mean, I love first-person shooters. I've loved Doom. I loved Quake. Chex Quest was a spectacular Doom clone back before we had the phrase first-person shooters.
Yep.
But yeah, no, so I grew up playing first-person shooters. And so I really enjoyed the stuff that you made kind of along those lines. But when you sent me a message about Battle Train, I was kind of like, wait, I also love deck builders. And you know what? Choo-choo trains, also pretty cool. My daughter has grown out of them, but, for a while, we had way too much invested in the the Duplo train environment. It's like every Christmas, building a Duplo village with the Duplo trains going around it, around the Christmas tree type of thing for years. And so it's like, okay, I like deck building games. I like placing tracks. Can you... For the people at home who don't know what I'm talking about, who haven't seen the first 3 episodes I did in my Indie Showcase series of Battle Trains, what's the elevator pitch for Battle Train? How would you describe it?
Oh, well, it's about the world's most popular game show called Battle Train and dueling explosive combat locomotives. It is a roguelite deck builder-ish, but the focus is on these train buildings. We call it deck and track builder, and this colorful cast that run this game show. So the general gameplay is, as you said, it does have deck builder elements, but you are building these train tracks towards your enemy space, and once you've connected your bases to their bases to your tracks, you send explosive trains out to them. It is a very realistic game. We've done a lot of research into train engine history and train engine mechanics, and decided to ignore all of it. And it's a very silly game. But we make silly games. We enjoy doing things that we felt like people haven't seen before. And this was a game that, as we were working on another game, actually, this came up as a mechanic that we were really interested in, and we started exploring it. And
which part in particular was the mechanic that came up? The track building or the? Yes,
actually, It was from. We made a playable sitcom called 3 out of 10 with for the Epic Game Store, which was a wild project and a lot of fun to work on. And it was literally a sitcom with these playable mini games in the middle of it. And we did 10 episodes. And
not just 3
one of the
them.
mini games, not just 3 of them. Okay. No, that was a show that was a quote unquote playable sitcom about the world's worst video game studio, where they've never made a game that scored better than 3 out of 10.
Oh, okay, I like that.
And yeah, it's very silly. One of the mini games involved what is kind of like the train track connection process, but it was a much different game, and people hated the mini game. But it was actually, there was something there that was really fun once we got rid of a few tricky elements of it and kind of explored what was interesting about the choice part of it. And so as I basically took that mechanic, and I think we're talking about 3 years ago at this point.
Sure.
I took it and actually brought it into Tabletop Simulator. And me and a couple of my coworkers made a tabletop version of the game to play and test out whether or not Battle Train would be fun. And it was a lot of fun. And from that point, we were like, okay, we need to actually make this into a real game because we're having a lot of fun just messing around with these tracks. Now, it wasn't the game you could ever make into a direct physical copy game because there had to be a DM placing all the tracks for you real fast.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it was also like, it proved like, okay, yes, this could be a cool little experience. And we began expanding it quite a bit as we've developed it into something really unique. And it's got a really, we feel, exciting world, really bizarre, over the top mechanics. Like, these trains are themed after the champions of this game show. So you've got like your pirate champion, you've got a Valkyrie Viking champion. We've got a bunch of champions we haven't talked about yet. Mm-hmm. You're playing as a contestant on the show, trying to battle your way through all of them and claim the crown of President Conductor. The title of President Conductor.
I would love the title of President Conductor. And it seems like you did a great job. You had it's not quite Cheryl. It's like Cheryl was the name.
Cheryl, yes.
Was the name of the character.
Serendipity, like that was due to a typo, and our voice actor was awesome and was like, "You read it," and then I was like, "Oh man, that's you. I didn't type that, did I?" And he was like, "You did," and we went back and had him record a new version of the line where he stumbles on it on purpose because he read it fluently the first time without
Welcome,
a single hesitation.
Yeah.
Yes, and I was like, "That was amazing. That was a typo," but now it's not.
Because the first time I was playing, I was excited. I was like, "Ooh, maybe I get to build my own character or whatever." But then I realized like you guys have voice acting for Cheryl, and presumably like the demo I played, it was like an early dev build. This is not a public facing demo. Presumably doesn't have a lot of what's going to be in the final game. Can you say how many characters you are going to have playable, or that you're hoping for at launch? Like not a precise number, but just like roughly thousands, millions, a dozen, that sort of thing.
We're aiming at actually having a more dynamic system for the contestants you play as, but Cheryl is going to be your first character that you meet and we do the tutorial with, so that you get familiar with the game with someone who has voice acting. But for the most part, the player character, at least initially, is going to be these contestants that could be pooled together, played in almost a random way. So you're not sure who you're going to be playing as. And there's some cool gameplay things hooked into that, and there's some stuff that I'm being coy about because it'd be fun if we pull it off well that breaks from that formula. But in general, I'm pretty excited to see what people think of the playable characters in the game.
Well, I always really enjoyed the writing in Tower of Guns when you're ascending the tower, and there's the different scripts that it randomly chooses from. They're not procedurally generated scripts. You wrote each of those.
I did, yeah. I think there were like 30 or 40 in the end.
Oh, there were a lot. And so every time you play the game, like your justification for why you were exploring this Tower of Guns was completely different. And it would be like a thief talking to his dog, and you're battling your way through this multi-1,000-foot tower full of giant robots shooting massive slow-moving bullets. And there's like
one of them, it was a DMV.
Oh yeah, it's like I really need to get my car's registration updated or something like that.
You know how that came about, right? I don't know.
No, I'd love to hear it.
I don't know if I've ever actually talked about this somewhere.
Go for it.
I had kind of, and I still do this. I had a rule for myself that if I were going to work on in general, just with everything I do, I try and do an hour of something productive every day, even if I'm on vacation or even from away. And that doesn't necessarily need to be something not fun. It could be drawing for an hour. It could be writing for an hour. But when I was traveling on vacation, I didn't have my dev machine with me. I just had this like little writing laptop. And I was like, well, I got to write the story for Battle Train, and I need to spend an hour doing something today. So I'm going to write a story. But I didn't like it. I liked it a little bit, but it was like, this isn't really or not the story for Battle Train. Sorry, the story for Tower Guns.
Yeah.
I was like, this isn't really, what I picture for Tower Guns. So I wrote another one.
Yeah.
And then I wrote a third one and a fourth one. I was like, I don't know about any of these. How about all of them? And then I just started writing them. Basically, I would give myself like 30 minutes to write a story, and I got used to the format of how they would work. And in the end, I was having a lot of fun writing all these dumb stories. And I was like, can we just give a random story? I haven't seen that before.
Yeah, the idea that your player's motivation is just completely different every time that you play the game, and that the antagonist is different every time. It was a really amusing format, and I felt like it was not necessarily a huge thing, but it brought a lot of joy. Like, it was disproportionately joyful. And when you're a one-man studio, disproportionately joyful is where you want your efforts to be spent.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, yeah. And I mean, I had a lot of fun writing it, and I'm glad that people seem to have really... Like, people keep mentioning that, and I thought it was going to be this kind of silly thing. I even have an option to turn it off entirely.
Yeah.
But, I had a lot of fun writing those stories, and I'm glad that people appreciate them. And I think it goes to show also, like, if you are okay with being a little bit wacky, then people can appreciate it. And, I think one of the stories was just somebody saying bro the whole time.
Bro.
And it was like it was like two bros talking to each other. Bro was all they had as a word. I guess now we would say what, brah instead of bro.
I mean, that's highly regional, you know.
Yeah, maybe, but it is. It was really like there were some really dumb and fun stories. I think one story was me and my brother arguing about how to do the music for the game because
Oh,
he did all
really?
the music in the game. Yeah,
It's like you come over here and do that sort of thing. Like, well, I'm
yeah, but
trying. There's a bunch of bullets in the way.
this is gonna sound weird, but that also taught me a lot about storytelling. Like
Oh,
writing a lot of stories fast is the fastest way to get better at writing, and I feel the same way about making games or about making art.
yeah.
I really subscribe to the thousand pots theory of crafting. That if you make one pot and you spend 1,000 years on it, it's going to be worse than the 1,000 pots that you spend 1 year on each one. Actually, that's not quite how the story goes. It's 1,000 days, I think.
Yeah,
on one
that
pot.
makes more sense because
Yeah.
here on at least in Nashville, our region of Earth, most humans don't live 1,000 years.
No, it's
Regardless
1,000
of
days. Sorry,
yeah, no, it's fine.
10 o'clock at night, man.
No, I know,
Yeah,
Sorry.
1,000 years on this one pot, and you can't. No.
Yeah, it's like
if
I've
you
been
spend
watching a lot of
1,000
Star
days
Trek
on
Deep
this,
Space Nine. It's like this is why nobody likes the founders. The changelings will just sit there and spend 1,000 years on one pot.
No, but the idea though is that it's if you spend 1,000 days on one pot and you do your best at making it the best thing that you possibly can,
Yeah.
but somebody else spends 1 day on 1,000 pots, by the time they get to their 1,000th pot, it will be better than the person who spent 1,000 days on one. And I firmly believe that is true. And I try and do that wherever I can and not be a perfectionist because I know that the next thing I make will be even better. And nobody will see, half of the pots you make or most of the pots you make, but they'll remember the pots that are really your strongest ones.
The ones you
and when you get to
publish.
that, right, and when you get to that 1,000th pot, they'll be like, "Wow, how'd you get really good at making games?" And I'm like, "I made 999 bad games."
Yeah. When you made Tower of Guns, you were running everything but basically the music for the most part. You mentioned your brother maybe helped you with the music. Like when it came to
He did
Battle
all the music, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, but it's one of those things though where like, you did art, you did programming, you did writing, and then by the time this new project Battle Train comes around and you're starting to mock it up, you've got a whole studio working for you on Mother Gunship and 3 out of 10 and these other projects. How did you decide which parts you were going to hold on to and which parts you were going to delegate? Like, what did you say? Oh, I'm saving this for myself on Battle Train.
Well, there's very little that I can save for myself. Basically, that's a good question. I need to start delegating things a little more, but at the same time, we're still a very small team. So, like, if you look at the Battle Train build that you're playing right now, there's still a lot of my hands in there.
Oh, there was one animation of like a train part being loaded onto the train, and I was like, Joe Mirabello did this easing. Like just
I did not.
You did not?
No,
Really? Whoever
nope.
did that just nailed like the vibe of the animation stuff that you've done on other stuff. Like I was just like,
Oh, well, I will pass that along. That was either Jess or Alexi, I think. But yes, it's awesome.
yeah, no, but I saw that animation and I stopped in the video and I'm like, this is like the most terrible posture animation. And it's just like a crane lowering something down and then swapping it out, But like
Yep.
I was just like this it has that kind of authorial intent or this feel where like even though you might not be doing this stuff day to day, you've built a team that knows like the voice of your earlier games and is like helping you communicate it, which is really neat.
Well, thanks. That's interesting to say that too, because I feel like I look at the team and I feel like my own voice is still there, and sometimes I worry about it being too much because I feel like one of the main benefits of having a team of people to work with is that everybody has a part to contribute to that voice.
Oh,
and so
certainly.
it makes me excited to see what other people are bringing. But it when you say that, it makes me feel like everything is still working together, our shared collective voice, which that makes me very happy to hear.
Well, you want something to feel like it has a unity of design.
Yes,
And-
yeah, clarity of vision is what I call it. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a fantasy author named Brandon Sanderson, and he's got a huge team of people that like help like test read his books, and you like send notes to the editors on like maybe this could be tightened up or this wasn't clear or blah blah blah. But like just because he's got like 12 people reading each chapter as he writes it doesn't mean it shouldn't still sound like him at the end. You know what I mean? Like it's I don't know, and like if you're trying to scale up a studio over time, like you've got a personal following, So I think it's really cool. That you're able to find people who, whether apparently you didn't direct them to do that, but like they picked up on it and just did it. Like that's
Well, I mean, some
cool.
of it does come through with directing, and some of it comes through with knowing what I tend to like. So they tend to, especially since I've worked with some of these people for, like some of these people I've worked with since 2017, 2018. So we're going on, like, like 7 years at this point. For 8 years for a few of these folks. Is that right? Is my math right? Yeah. It's was it 2016 that I started? I'm trying to remember when some of the earliest folks started. I think it was late 2017. But anyway, either way, like some of those people I've just known or contributed enough to the vision that what you perceive as Joe is actually more a combination of people. Like if you take, particularly what I call him now my co-founder, Chris Sukowski. He's a fantastic tech artist, fantastic engineer, fantastic artist and developer in his own right. A lot of what you see now as a Terrible Posture game is actually a collection of, or I should say, like an amalgam of him and I, like his work and my work. And even in that trailer, some of the silliest moments that look like they should be Joe-isms were just Zuko going wild, and I love it.
I'm assuming that's his nickname. Or
his nickname is Zuko, yes,
okay.
And he gets a lot of flack from people about Avatar stuff.
Yeah. No, that's fair. Yeah.
No, that's his nickname though, and he's a fantastic developer. And at this point, I feel like the studio is kind of a combination of both of our styles, and you can see that in a lot of places in the game.
And at this point, you guys, you have at least a dozen people or so working for you.
Yep. And it depends on how you count us, because some people are part-time, some people are full-time, some people are. We're scattered all over the world. Really, there's a couple people in Europe who are contractors, but have been working long-term with us for years now on various projects. And actually, one of them all the way since Tower of Guns. There was a person who was a big fan of Tower of Guns and was giving me a lot of great feedback, really good feedback. And when it came time to test the porting work that remember I had mentioned that Grip Digital had done a lot of port work with us. I wasn't able to go to Europe on my own, but he was already over there, so I asked if he would go and try out the builds for me. And that was when we started working together officially, and he's been working with me ever since.
Well, that's really
so
cool.
You're talking about 2015, I think, for him. Wow, geez, that's a long time.
Yeah.
Wonderful dude.
So you went from a one-man studio making Tower of Guns, maybe feels like about a decade ago to me, but it's hard to place like exactly.
That's about right. Yeah, it came out in March of 2014, but there was like a lot of people played it early access, so that would have been late 2013. 2014 March something or other. I remember I set the release date to the day before Thief came out. Because I was really excited about the new Thief 4. I was like, I love the Thief series. I wanted to really, enjoy playing that game guiltlessly.
Yeah.
And then I never finished it because it was not Thief 2.
I've heard that from everybody who loved Thief 2. So that's all they want is just like make Thief 2 again. But so you went from one guy about 10 years ago to a few people by 8 years ago to now up to a dozen. And I saw on your Steam page, you're actually working with an entirely, like, a second studio as well in some sort of collaborative effort on Battle Train. Could you talk a little bit about, like, what that collaboration looks like and what they bring to it versus what y'all bring to it?
Yes, and that's Nerd Ninjas. The Nerd Ninjas found us. We originally were indie pals, and we were chatting about VR development, and we showed them what we were up to, and they were very excited about it. And when we mentioned that Battle Train was something that we were pitching around, they were like, we want to make this game with you, and we can help you fund it.
Well, that's always nice.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yep, that let us actually get the game, basically get its road to completion, because we had been pitching it around for a little while, but 2024 is a pretty hard time to pitch games right now to publishers.
I could see that.
The industry's in an awkward state where it's very hard to find external parties to help you fund something. And I actually look at that as if a project can't find external funding, maybe that's a sign that there's not people there who'd want to play it. So I always kind of am a little bit worried when you can't find funding. I've been very lucky for every project so far that we've had to find some kind of a party to help us fund it. And in some cases, it's been not very much, but just that in and of itself has kind of let me validate what we were working on. That's the first external validation of a project.
No, that makes sense.
Yeah, in this case, just the entire industry was in a really rough spot. It's very hard for any project to get funded right now. But Nerd Ninja saw it and was like, we would love to work on this with you. And they, one is they helped us with funding, and two, they're basically our first line of defense when it comes to us sharing builds and getting feedback. And the owner of the company over there, a guy named Nate Chatelier, has a really good designer sense on him, a good designer's head on him. He comes out of development himself, and when he first looked at the game and kind of wrote down a bunch of notes, I passed those notes off to my team, and they asked me if it was a designer or someone on his team who had played the game and given him the notes, because they were not expecting that level of depth from someone who looks like an executive on paper.
Someone who owns a company can be competent.
Yes, he's very competent. He's very sharp.
And so that's a challenge, though, that you're gonna be viewed the same way. You know, you got to prove that you still got your chops. You know, down the line, the bigger the company gets, and that's
you're
something.
Absolutely right. Yeah.
You know, like as somebody who I'm currently self-employed and I've got a few contractors working for me, but you know, if things scale up later, it's like, you know, I know that people, like, if I'm not careful, they're gonna assume that I'm an idiot. You know.
See, I take the tactic of I probably am an idiot, but sometimes I'm right, and so I just do a bunch of stuff. Yeah.
Well, it's like, I am an idiot, but I'm an interesting idiot. That's why I'm a performance artist, which, granted, being a game designer and a performance artist, you have kind of different things that you need to do well. But, like, you also need to be able to run a business if you're running... If you have a payroll, you need to make payroll, you know?
That is true. And that's actually something else that Nerd Ninjas and us, that we bonded over, is that I feel very strongly in trying to take care of my developers and make sure that I'm being transparent with them, because that whole 38 Studio situation.
Yeah. Where you guys thought the studio was doing great, and it wasn't.
Right. And I actually came out of that not as rough as, like, I had a little bit saved up and I had been thinking about going indie, but there were other developers who came out of 38 Studios with, like, in debt. One person's wife went into labor the day after we lost health insurance.
Oh, no.
Yeah, there was situations where they had relocated us to Rhode Island, and they had said that they had taken all of the old houses and put them on the market for the people who had a house, who owned a house, but they hadn't. And so there were suddenly, like, mortgages got reverted back to the original owners, and so people had two mortgages suddenly out of nowhere. There was a lot of, like, really, like, it really was not a great situation. And a lot of it was very, very public because it involved some funds from some state funds from Rhode Island in order to move the company. Mm-hmm. And I have some unhappy opinions about the state of Rhode Island, but regardless of that, I feel like there was some people who really came out of the 38 Studio situation not in a good way, and I was very lucky. Mm-hmm. But I did want to make a promise to myself to not put someone else in that position, and do everything in my power to keep everybody on the team informed about the status of the company, about how we were doing and what we were building and what we were working on together, and as much as I could. So it's that attitude of openness and transparency and just trying to do right by the team is something that Nerd Ninjas has shared with us. They from what Nate said, they value similar, and from what everyone I've met there has said, they value similar ethics in how they run their studio, which I like.
Awesome. And from so you found a partner that complements y'all's values, but then in terms of talent, it sounds like they're helping you guys with feedback and quality control stuff. Is there anything else particularly technically that they're handling, or is that more what you're keeping in-house?
That's all in-house right now, but they have offered us a lot of opinions as they play the game, and we are open to ideas as they suggest things, which is really helpful. They'll kind of help us brainstorm with things, but it's really just the beginning, so we'll see kind of where it goes. But, you know, they're as excited about the brand as we are, and they want to be involved. I know that they want to see if Battletrain can grow into something really cool, and that makes me excited because I feel like assuming that when Battle Train comes out, if it does pretty well, I think that this could be the beginning of something that could have a lot of co-development that gets a little bit more with every single game. Because I'm hoping that this is something where we can do more with it.
I mean, it's interesting that you talk about the brand, because I had kind of a silly question, if you'll indulge me, right?
Sure.
So part of the framing of Battle Train is that it's the world's most popular game show. Now, obviously, it's a single-player, deck-building, track-laying, locomotive-exploding PC game, but, are you considering a pitch to Netflix? Because, I don't know if you saw The Mole Season 2, but they flew a bunch of people to Malaysia, and it looks really pretty there. There's a lot of valleys in Malaysia. You could maybe set one up with, some tracks and blow up some trains. Is this something that you guys in the back pocket, you're like, don't add anything to the game that we couldn't do in a valley in Malaysia, because we want to keep that door open?
I have not thought about blowing up a valley in Malaysia.
Okay.
But there are room for good ideas like that, so keep them coming.
Okay.
Never stop on the sharp idea. Never stop on the first idea.
Cool. Well, while I'm pitching you bad ideas, if you need a host for that show, I got my passport recently, and I would love to go.
I would love the idea of a Battle Train show. I think it would be fun. I don't think that's a bad idea at all. And it's really funny that you joke about that, about blowing up valleys in Malaysia, because there are similar jokes like that in the story.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a really funny premise. And in the demo that I showed on my channel, the early dev build, we don't get a lot of the story. We get kind of the tutorial, and then we play against a few champions. But it looked like from the trailer, you've got a bunch of behind the scenes moments with the different champions interacting off camera. You've how do you mind my asking, if somebody was going to play the full game, the experience you're intending, how much of it is story driven? What is this, a 20-hour story game, a 40-hour story game? What could people expect?
We're terrible at estimating that.
That's okay.
I thought Forge was going to be an 8-hour game, and people tell me they put 200 hours into a single run in that game.
Wow.
So,
that's awesome. I mean, it's great that, people get that sort of experience out of it, but yeah, it's also, you're really bad at estimating. That's way off, man.
Yeah, we're pretty bad.
I'm sorry. That's
stuff.
Not close.
But no, the one, we're not talking too much about the actual story yet.
Okay,
we are excited about it.
I understand that. And I don't want to pry, it gives people something to look forward to, but yeah.
What I can say, though, is that over multiple projects now, we've kind of been gathering voice actors for things that we've worked on, and we work with people again and again and again. So if you look at some of the actors from the original Mother Gunship, they are returning, and some of the actors from 3 out of 10 have returned for working with us on this project. And the result is that it really feels like I know the voice actors who are we know each other, and we're able to bounce ideas off each other, and things are able to get pretty ridiculous. And I feel like you can feel that chemistry in the story itself, and things get really silly in the story, really silly. But that, to me, it feels like the performances are top notch, because we basically have created this culture with our voice actors I know that I trust them to do their job well, and they trust me to give them something absolutely bonkers with which to exhibit their skills. And that has really worked out well.
Yeah, and what I do on HermitCraft, where I collaborate with the same 24 people playing Minecraft all the time, I kind of know if I set certain people up in certain situations, they'll be set up for success. But if I did other people, they wouldn't be. You just learn people's creative strengths and weaknesses for what are they good at communicating, what are they less confident, what's going to throw them, what's going to feel right. Because a lot of finding good groove improvisationally is just getting people in a place where things feel right. And so that's cool that you're establishing this talent stable, I guess, where you're bringing people out to do the stuff they're good at.
It's not only that, but there's good, but then there's also trust. I trust them, and they a lot of these people have they've grown to trust me, which feels really, really good as a voice director. When I have to direct VO, there are places where I know I'll push an actor, but then there are also places where I'm like, okay, this is a place where I know this actor can go really wacky if I let them. And I'll just ask them and be like, okay, so how do you think the person would say this? And they'll come up with something that's beyond anything I could have thought of. And you only get that when there's this mutual trust because they know they can do no wrong by suggesting ideas. And they also know that they don't have to because you've got their back, the general script and the quality of the writing. So I feel pretty pleased with how the story's turned out on Battle Train so far, and I'm really excited for what people will think of it, to see what people will think of it.
That is something I'm definitely looking forward to as well. And like, yeah, y'all, based on the writing I saw in Tower of Guns, where you're writing all these different stories, but they're all funny. It's like, okay, so this is going to be great. Can you say how? So you mentioned you don't get to do a lot of stuff hands on with the stuff now that you're managing a dozen-person company, but you did say you are the one who's like doing the direction for the voice acting.
There might have been someone who was helping me with the VO, like a lot of the voice acting for this we did quite a while ago, and I'm trying to remember if another developer had jumped in for one or two of the sessions. But I know I did most of it.
That was one place where you were able to say, okay, I'm the one with the personal relationship with these people. I'm gonna take the lead here. And I think that's actually a really logical, just to kind of get back to the building a business standpoint. One of the biggest things that you can't delegate, in my opinion, is a relationship. You can make introductions, but like the people that you know from places you worked before or people you worked with before, they know you. They don't know the person you hired, And so then you have to kind of rebuild that trust from scratch if you try to delegate certain types of things like that. And so that's cool that you were able to prioritize that and make sure that your voice actors felt like they're working with somebody they know and that they're good with,
Yeah, and that's, I mean, a bunch of these voice actors also hang around our Discord now, and they'll post funny jokes about the characters from various games from time to time. And so it's like they've become part of the community too, which I think is a lot of fun.
Oh, that's cool.
But yeah, I mean, the same thing holds true with, various people in, the YouTube community or in the press community. Like, you yourself, you and I are talking right now, and we've known each other now for 10 years.
Yeah.
Wait, wow, 10 years? Geez,
yeah,
like
no,
that.
I mean, basically, I think I'm not sure if I've got the order right on this. Did I learn about Tower of Guns from talking to you at PAX? Or did I talk to you? Because I know we hung out at PAX a lot one year, but I'm not sure if we had met briefly a previous year. It was so long ago.
We had not met before PAX. You did a video first.
Yeah, okay, so I must have randomly just stumbled onto the game somehow. I don't know how then.
Okay, so actually I can tell you here that, okay, this is going to sound really weird, but I have a little diary that I write down a day, just a line of what happened for every day.
I should have that because I am bad at remembering things.
I'm quite bad at remembering things as well, but I also will write down whatever I did for the day, and I've been doing this for years and years and years, and the result is that I can basically search my history of my life.
Oh, wow.
And so I can see on April 23rd, 2016, PAX East Day 2, met Joe Hills in all caps. Also hung out with a few other YouTubers, and then they kind of go on.
Sorry, other YouTubers. You don't get the caps.
Well, no, there's other YouTubers mentioned.
I know.
I'm just being a jerk. But yeah. But I can also go back, and I think there's an earlier one here where I make a note that you did a Let's Play in 2013 of Tower Guns. So that 2016 would have been a couple years after Tower Guns came out. So you had been playing it for quite a while before we ever met.
Yeah,
that's quite creepy that I can do that. But it is also very cool.
No, it is very cool.
Parlor trick.
Yeah, because I think I must have first seen the display or something, but maybe I didn't talk to you at the booth. But I'm trying to remember how I first found the game because I've been going to PAX East for a long time. I was
so you might have seen it because I did show it in 2013 at the mini booth. And then I showed it in 2014 at the Indie Mega booth. And if we had met then, it might have been very quick, hey, try my game. Hey, I'm a YouTuber, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and we might not have even spoken. I might have just seen the thing and been let me make a note to look at that on Steam later. Because that's I was gonna say I found most of the games in my Indie Spotlight showcase from developers tables at PAX, and I had been there at PAX East, so I was assuming that was how I discovered the game, even if we hadn't met or spoken.
Yeah, and I know I showed in 2013 as well as 2014 at the Mega Booth and the Mini Booth.
Yeah, so that's one of the weird things too, is when you even just showing up and having people see your sign is can be possibly like disproportionately successful advertising. Like,
it's super weird
in
because
a
it's
way
also
that you can't really keep track of that or prove it, but it's just like, random people walking past might see the game on Steam later and be like, oh yeah, that had some cool artwork. Because I feel like you had a cool like cardboard stand or a banner or something with the tower on it.
Oh yeah, that was fun to draw.
Yeah,
that was the first thing I drew in the game was that damn tower, but it was a lot of fun to make.
So cool, and that I remember seeing that, which was part of why I was like, I can't remember if we spoke, but I know I saw that.
So yeah, I did have the poster with the tower both years that I was showing. And I had a big banner behind me the second year. The first year it was literally just a standee banner and then a single machine. So like I didn't even have a full booth. It was like sharing a booth with three other people. We each had one machine there. And then the second year I had a full setup of like 3 or 4 machines, and my brother came up from Virginia to come and help me run the booth, and I had some friends helping me run it. It was definitely homebrew style, like friends and family helping me out, but it was also super fun.
Well, that sort of friends and family thing is so big when you're just starting out at anything. And so it's great that you were able to get that sort of support from your folks,
Yeah, it was awesome. But I mean, they weren't really close. Like it was literally Brother Mike had to, come up from the DC area. So it was, a flight and then staying here for a couple of days, and a lot harder to do when you've got kids.
Oh, yeah.
He didn't have kids at the time, neither did I. And that makes a big difference. But I bet you if you had seen it, it would have been in 2014, because that was when he had a bigger. Hold on, let me see if I have anything. Like you could probably go back to your first videos on Power Guns.
I might have even said in my video, like, oh, I saw this booth. Sorry, I didn't prepare for this interview well enough to have to remember or look this up. But
no, that's all right. It got me curious now though about when you first did the first video, because I bet it was 2013. So maybe you did see me when I was in the mini booth. It was super small. We were there. I was there for every day, but it was like just one computer and a poster, and that was all I had. And
the other thing too is I'm not the sort of person who walks up and is like, "Hey, I've got a huge YouTube channel. Like, tell me about your game." I'm just like, I'll just like ask people about their game, and like maybe I'll mention YouTube if it makes sense in the conversation, but like, it's more likely that like I would wait to like bother them later, like. Like, hey, I got your email at the PAX, I run a small YouTube channel, like, you mind sending me a demo if you don't, if it wasn't public. If it was public, I'd just use the public demo. I wouldn't go out of my way to ask for a dev build or whatever. But
yeah, I couldn't tell you, but I do know that when we're talking 2013, 2014, like, it was only just becoming known that YouTubers were as much of a stake of a game's life as any other form of marketing or post-launch support. Like back then, it wasn't really known that YouTubers were playing games. Like, it were just kind of was becoming known by indies and smaller devs, and AAA hadn't gotten wind of it yet. They were like just starting to. Just the idea that YouTubers would play games at all and that people were watching was still kind of fresh in 2013, 2012, 2014.
Well, and I will say, I really appreciate you reaching out to me about Battletrain. Like, this came at a time when one of my favorite, like, web animators from, like, 2005 had just started making videos again about playing indie games. And was, like, doing these spotlights of, like, I played 15 indie games in May, and now I'm going to make an animation about it so that I don't seem like I have a problem. It's not an addiction if it's a creative endeavor. Oh, God, please watch this video so I can feel better about my life. And I'm watching these indie things, and I'm like, man, I haven't done those indie spotlight videos since my ex-wife started grad school. That was kind of one of those things where it's like, in order to kind of like help keep all the wheels on the cart at home, I was like, well, something's got to give. I was like, well, I'll come back to these indie spotlight videos later when things calm down. And so I see these Matt Wilson videos about these indie games, and I'm like, you know what? Maybe things have calmed down. Now I just need to pick one of these like 30 indie games that Matt Wilson played and maybe try and do a spotlight on one. But I don't know which one to pick. I'm having decision paralysis. And then you randomly message me like, hey, I have an indie game no human on earth has ever played. Do you want to play it? I'm like, yeah. This is the best timing.
I'm so glad that you did, man. Thank you so much.
Timing. I was the right time. It was great. I was so excited because I was like, you were solving a problem for me. Like, and then the game was
Yeah.
great too. Like, I mean, if the game was terrible, I would have told you, and I would have tried to make it funny in the video, and be like, well, they've got a lot of development time left. I'm sure it'll be good later, but like, but
Well, that's good to hear also. But I mean, also,
yeah,
you know,
you're not
like,
paying me. I'm not gonna cover your words. That's not my problem.
no, it's also, I mean, the game gets better from people being critical. So all you know, you're saying that, you know, Joe Hills is the reason the Tower Guns developers drink.
Yeah.
In like your first video, or the Turbo Posture devs rather drink. You know, it's I actually look at this as being kind of tempered when I see what people are struggling with, or even things you don't say. I'll watch these videos and I'll be like, he doesn't know he can click there. All right, that's a note. We need to put something there that says this is something that might make it easier here, or here's something you missed, or here's something we didn't really tell the player, or
Okay.
maybe that's a bad design. So like I'm learning.
Yeah.
And,
Well, I will say when I made the joke about like I'm the reason the terrible posture devs drink, it was when I was like nitpicking like the coin symbol on the UI doesn't match the coins on the play field. This one has a rim and this one doesn't. It's
yes,
like
you're right.
it was really
that.
nitpicky stuff where I'm like, I'm sure this is in somebody's queue, and now it's just they're getting called out. Like
It was not, but it is now.
okay.
No, it was a good point because you're, you know, those things can be very invisible to a developer. Like it maybe was on our list at one point, but somehow it dropped off a list, or it was lower priority, and it's invisible to a developer. The first time you see someone else play your game, which we had very few people were playing this game, like you and a handful of other.
You said you had the Nerd Ninja guys playing it, but you know, they're
the
also
Nerd Ninja guys have played it a little bit, but yeah.
like, you know, they have a different branding. They're a professional game development company, whereas my branding is I'm an obnoxious nitpicker. I'm a pedant. I will just tear things apart. And so you're going to get a little bit of different heat, you know.
Yes, but then also you're not going to make excuses for us.
No, it's
like
not my job.
If you struggle on something, you're going to be like, well, I'm struggling on this. Why? And I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I'm grateful that you gave the game a go, and I'm glad that you liked it. I hope that you continue to like, you know, future builds we send your way to give a go. But it's always a little bit nerve wracking when you're sending something out for someone to look at externally as like the first like all right, trial by fire, let's see how this thing goes. And I was very happy that you went back and tried again. That's the best sign right there, is that you didn't immediately be like, all right, well, that's that. We're done. Thanks for letting us play. Let's go back to something else.
Yeah, no, I was not going to immediately give up on something that was honestly that fun. Because I like I said, I love deck building games. I saw there were a bunch of cards I hadn't gotten to mess with yet. I saw there were a bunch of events I hadn't gotten to do yet. And so, yeah, I was actually kind of glad I didn't do any of the random events in the first video. So that gave me kind of a hook for, okay, I'm going to take a totally different approach in the second video. Like, giving players choices is good because it keeps things interesting. But for people like me who play games on YouTube, giving people choices is just you're throwing me a rope to just be like, okay, here we go, new video, new approach. Let's get.
Well, that's my hope,
going.
is that, you know, we're making something that people can play it multiple times and they'll feel like they're seeing something different every time. And, you know, I mean, that's something that we've learned from, you know, from Tower Guns or from other Gunship, that like there's things that we can do well and things we can not do well for creating that replayability. Like, I don't think we did a very good job in the original Mother Gunship on that front. But if you look at Forge, which I know you haven't tried yet, but if you want a copy, let me know. But it's like for that one, I feel like we got it back a little bit, and I'm like, oh right, this is what was really good, and so we're trying to get that into Battle Train for like replayability or for just the stickiness of the game. I mean, we're always learning, and we're always getting better at our craft, and I feel like one of the best ways we can do that is by just listening to what people say. And you know, I think your videos are very entertaining, but with Tower Guns back in the day, they were, you know, I would watch all of your videos, but then also I would actually learn something from how you were going through your choices, and I appreciated that. So beyond just the entertainment angle, I was also like, all right, what notes am I going to have? Let's take some notes here.
I try to live a life that's exemplary, even if it's not a good example. I want people to learn from this. You know, there's a saying that I particularly like, learn from other people's mistakes so you have time to make your own. You know, I try to make my own mistakes as publicly as possible so other people can learn from them and make new ones, you know? So yeah, I'm very pleased to hear that. So Joe, one thing I noticed was that like the computer, when I play some cards and do some trains, and then I run out of minerals and click next
Mm-hmm.
turn, the computer says thinking. Presumably, you guys had to figure out some sort of heuristics for the computer to play the same game as the player, because it's only a single player game. You don't have multiplayer yet. Have you? What did you guys kind of like learn about programming that sort of algorithm for the first time? Because I don't think you've had anything that did deck building games like this in any of your other games, have you?
Not to this extent. I mean, the AI in Tower Guns is super simple. In Mother Gunship, it got fairly complicated. And then with we worked on a visual novel recently with actually had turn-based combat, and for that, I think it was all like Slay the Spire, like pattern-based. So there was a set formula of moves that you had to navigate your way through. For this, it actually involves some really complicated AI where the opponent you're facing has to decide what it wants to do, weigh the different options, and it all kind of boils down to black magic. So I can say that I have very little to do with the AI's construction, and there's two people that you would want to lay the credit there for at their feet, and that'd be Mark, one of our designers, and an engineer named Dom. And the two of them have been working for months now to get the AI to be smart and also to be a little bit surprising. And so it's been a very iterative process. And, while it sounds like, hey, just make it do the best possible move, it's actually not that simple when you have a lot of potential possible moves and you can't calculate all these different options for routes all at the same, like all at once.
Do you have the different like champions have different like attitudes with how they weight different options? Like, one might be more aggressive with certain strategies and others might be aggressive with different strategies, or is there kind of just something where you're like, well, if you don't play it this way, it's too easy, so we just kind of have to have them all be pretty good, even if they're not optimal?
Yes, but there's also a couple of clever tricks you can do to give personality behind some of the opponents. For example, they all have their own deck of cards, and so whatever cards you give them is going to influence how they seem like they play because of the options they have. Similarly, the board that they're on can be completely different, and that also can kind of affect what they do. So like there can be certain characters that are more predisposed to be on tiny little boards, which means that they're going to be play more aggressively, or they're suddenly going to be on your face basically within a couple of moves, and they'll seem less like they're calculating something well in advance. We're trying to get more and more sophisticated, but this is the kind of thing where you also only want to be so sophisticated, because if it gets too complicated, the player is going to the player wants to feel smart as well, and they want to feel like they are fighting against personalities, and so you actually don't want to get too complicated with the AI. You want it to be just smart enough to feel like it's actually a challenge and is alive, but you still want some level of you feel like you can outsmart them. Because like definitely with this kind of game, you can get complicated enough with the AI that there's no way you could win. You could basically program it to think of every possible move and wait what it should do 5 moves ahead of time. And we're not going down that road, for example, at least yet.
Well, that's probably wise. Yeah. I mean, there might be some players who are like at the tournament level, well, obviously there's no multiplayer yet, but have you guys considered like this is something that people could actually play in live tournaments at conventions, like on a projector one day? Like
that would be fun.
You could have at PAX a live not Mother Gunship. You could have at PAX a live battle train thing where you come out with a microphone and you're the host, and you pull somebody from the audience who's absolutely not pre-selected, and me, please pick me. Hi. But you could do something really goofy with that in the long term.
That would be really fun, actually. Yeah, that kind of tournament play. I have a healthy respect for any studio that does multiplayer, and I have a lot of fear for studios that do esports style multiplayer, because it's not easy. You have to really work hard to keep things working, keep them stable. It's basically constant maintenance, and then you also have to combat with keeping your audience alive. Because if your audience begins to atrophy, then people stop playing the game. You need a certain amount of people playing the game in order for it to still be a game that people can play. So you have to kind of constantly update it. Now with Battletrain, I would love the idea of this being something that could grow, but I'm not going to make any assumptions that it's going to be something that can achieve that level of grandness. I would love for that to be the case, but let's see how it goes and take it a step at a time, you know?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm not going to hassle you and say you got to get multiplayer in immediately so I can play with my friends. But I am going to say if you guys had a custom dev build for using on stage at big events, let me beat up one of my friends at Battletrade at that. It's like we didn't have to fix all the bugs because it literally only runs on one computer that we hooked up to one projector.
That's basically swapping turns then, basically, which would be pretty fun. There is something to be said for that turn-based gameplay. I do think also with the different kinds of champions you could have some really wild decks of cards that were, depending on the champion that you chose to play as or something, you could have some real cool surprises. So, I think there's a lot of cool elements. I really do think it would be fun and exciting, but I don't want to get ahead of myself. Let's make a game that is great and people love, and then we'll evaluate where it is. We'll start with the fat though.
Yeah, no, I mean the single player experience being story driven, it makes sense as a solid way to start. Because as you said earlier, you started off making MMOs, and it's more work than you really can invest in at this scale, or time.
Yeah. We can look at Forge. Forge had full co-op. Only Gunship Forge had full co-op and a gauntlet mode, and I would say it probably, was about half of the scope of what you could do if it were single player only. Just because of practical needs. I mean, that game also was pretty resource intensive for the quest because we had a lot of bullets flying everywhere and everything. And if you think about multiplayer, you need double that if you're playing with someone.
Yeah.
So this game doesn't have that problem at least, but it's still multiplayer adds a lot of complexity. Network multiplayer. I hadn't really thought about changing turns though. That would be interesting.
Well, yeah, because the decks aren't secret. Just being able to play it passing a laptop back and forth, sitting next to somebody on an airplane.
That's interesting. I hadn't thought about that. Basically shared basically Mario Party style.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you could even have two controllers if you wanted, and but you wouldn't need it. You could just pass a keyboard,
Yeah.
So, Joe, you mentioned when we chatted a few weeks ago that Steam wish lists are what new projects live or die on. That's completely news to me. I'd never heard that before, but I'm guessing that there's some new reality here. How do those numbers impact the actual business or reality of game designers? What does that mean if you have 500 people wish list your game versus 5,000 or 50,000? What is that? What happens?
Well, I mean, it can be the difference between life or death when your game comes out, really. It's really, every project cycle, the industry changes completely. So you're constantly having to keep in the loop with what the best way to evaluate projects is and how you're successful or not, basically what you need to be successful. And right now, one of the things that we know is that games that have a lot of Steam wish lists will get more visibility on launch. And the Steam algorithm will really encourage a game with a lot of wish lists or a game that has a high velocity wish list, meaning a lot coming in at once, to just be floated in front of more people's feeds. And Valve is not shy about this. They'll tell you straight up. And so these days, literally one of the best things you could do for a small developer that you like is go wish list their game and tell other people to, because it's pretty critical. If you have, 50 or 500 wish lists, there's a good chance that just nobody will see your game when it comes out. Inversely, or conversely, if you have 1 million wish lists, which I've never done, but it would be lovely someday, then you pretty much already have a hit. And it's gotten to the point where that is reliable enough that you could say, look, this game has 1 million wish lists. I want to go to a publisher and get a really good publishing terms with them. Or you could even take it to some funding places and be like, look, we want to finish this game. We have 1 million wish lists. And they'll be like, what? Really? And you can be like, yeah, give us some money to finish this game. Here's a proof that we know people want this game. And, if you had 1 million wish lists, you could pretty much guarantee that a lot of people would be lining up to help you finish that game and fund it. So it's really an interesting game these days because it is very hard. The industry itself is very opaque. and wish lists are one of those things that people can see, and almost kind of how like YouTube views were back in the day. If your trailer got 1 million views, you'd be like, okay, this game's going to do great. But now Steam wish lists are kind of that tool.
So wait, so if I go to your wishlist page or your Steam page, can I see how many people wishlisted it, or is that something that like you have access to behind the scenes?
That's something that I have access to. You can see follower accounts though, and I believe that that's on a publisher basis. And people have tried to extrapolate follower accounts into what wishlist would be like. But right now, it is still just you only know your own wish list. However, a lot of people have been very public about wish lists in the past, and have Valve doesn't seem to be as concerned about that. Like some of the platforms, some of the consoles wouldn't want you talking about what your numbers were because they don't want people to know how they're doing versus like PlayStation games are doing. If for example, one console had 50 wish lists, another one had 500 wish lists for the same game, well, one of those consoles has probably sold a lot more units than the other. So like that console maker may not want you to say that stuff, but Valve knows they don't have anything really to hide. They're pretty much the top of the food chain when it comes to PC gaming. Yeah. And so I guess they don't seem to really care. And so devs have been telling each other, and publishers have been talking about it. Publishers may still hide their wish list numbers, but in general, we know that you need to get a few thousand wish lists if you want to have a good solid launch. At least a few thousand wish lists.
So you launched your Steam page for Battle Train a few weeks ago. You had a few YouTubers do videos. You posted some stuff on your Discord and your Twitter. Like, did you have a target? Like, hey, by the end of the month, we need 500 wish lists?
We did have a target, and that target was actually based off of research from there's quite a few. I mean, this is kind of getting into the weeds a little bit, but there's quite a few resources now for indie developers that didn't exist 10 years ago when I started this. And one of them is another Chris Zukowski, not the Chris Zukowski who works with us, but another Chris Zukowski has a site called How to Market a Game. I think it's called How to Market a Game. It might be How to Market a Video Game. And he has an awesome course just on Steam wish lists, and it's very current. And the weird thing is that it goes into a lot of the things that developers should do that I was doing on accident with Tower of Guns, and now has kind of become weirdly canon for how you make and build and sell a game.
Just let your wife know, hey, buy me a hat that says Tastemaker Trendsetter. I'm there, and I deserve to wear that on my head. That's a recognition that I should have. And I just died in Minecraft. That's fine. Okay. Well, can you share, or do you feel comfortable sharing whether or not, while I go get my corpse back, did you... So it sounds like you had a target.
Yes, and I can say right now, publicly, I could say, like, there are 3 numbers of wish lists that are kind of like 3 different levels. One would be the like, oh, we should be worried number. Yeah. Another is the like, oh, this game is going to be an insta hit when it comes out. And then something in the middle, which is like, hey, we're in the game, we're still doing okay, but we've got a lot of work cut out for us in terms of getting this game, the word out there, and getting more wish lists. And we're in that middle category right now, where it's nothing to sneeze at. We've done better than some games have. But I would love to get as many wish lists as we can, because it basically these days that is what makes a game successful or not. If any of your listeners right now, viewers, want to wish list the game, I would be incredibly grateful. So that's why I wanted to say, hey, please wish list the game. Now that I went on a long ramble about it.
No, that's fair. I am being asked if I need assistance from all these skeleton deaths I'm incurring. Hopefully not. But yeah, I only have 5 minutes to get all my stuff back, or it doesn't come back. So I do need to go aggressively kill this skeleton. This is what I get for digging a hole.
I thought you were clearing the top of the mountain, not the middle of the mountain.
Well, apparently I fell into a cave, and so now we have 2 problems, as the kids say. Okay, I think this is most of my valuable stuff. I left some stone there. Oh, that's actually a shovel or something I need. Okay, sorry. I don't want to be rude, like, right before you're leaving, but I'm like, oh, this is time sensitive. It's like, okay, you got some wish list stuff, and I've got some, like, not losing all my stuff to a skeleton stuff, and we're both good. So that's...
You good?
Yeah, I'm good. So that is really interesting, though, that, like, this whole, metric that didn't exist. I mean, technically Steam Wishlist did exist a while ago, but like nobody was targeting that 10 years ago,
it wasn't
to my
like
knowledge.
this weird. It wasn't this weird standard.
Yeah.
Like Mother. It also wasn't as hard to get them. Like, I mean, Steam just wasn't as full of games, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it does mean that it's very hard for like I don't know if Tower Guns would have sold as well as it did today if it came out, just because there's so many great games out right now.
I mean,
I think there's so many tools that it's easier to make a game, it's easier to release a game, but it is a lot harder to get people to see that you've even made or released a game.
well, talking about like the tools being different now, I'm sure that there's stuff where you're like, oh man, if this existed when I was making Tower of Guns, I would have saved 40 hours. Or like this would have.
Yeah.
So
there's tons of stuff like that. Yeah.
So I mean, even if you made Tower of Guns today, it might be 10 times, or might have been made 10 times faster, or had like a bunch of stuff that you didn't have time for the first time around. So it kind of cuts both ways, I guess. I don't know.
No, you're right. That there's a lot more. Just in general, it's easier to make things nowadays. But it's that's a good point. I hadn't thought about that. But it is generally. It reminds me a lot more of the of just books in general. You go into a Barnes and Noble, there are a lot of books there that you could read. And a few years ago, we didn't have quite that situation because I think it was a little bit more like when you went into the Steam store, it was just smaller. And Tower Guns was actually the very beginning of the opening of the quote unquote floodgates. And so I'm grateful that they did open them, because that is what led to me being able to do this fun second career. But it has gotten very crowded. I mean, it's been 10 years since then. Jeez, yeah.
Well, and I will say, like, YouTube to some degree is the same way. When I started making webcomics in around 2007. Webcomics have been around for a few years, and I kind of missed the first wave. And by the time I got involved, basically everybody was doing it. Air quotes on everybody, but like, but then I got to YouTube a little bit earlier, and I took all the stuff that I had learned at webcomics and applied that to launching my YouTube stuff. And that was something where it's like, oh hey, I'm actually like more toward the front of the wave this time. Hopefully the next thing. Which I don't know what that is. I'm thinking it's maybe something with watch-based holograms. In about 5 years, Apple's going to get that locked down. My goal is to be like the first watch-based hologram entertainer, That's why I keep my Apple developer account active. So I'm going to get access to those APIs early. But
I believe in you.
Yeah, thanks. But yeah, it's one of those things where like, yeah, timing really does matter on this stuff. But like, I hope that people out there who are thinking about making games don't feel discouraged by hearing that, because, just because, Steam right now is like, where we missed that, you might have missed that first wave, like, there's going to be a next wave too. And all the stuff you're learning today, could help you be ready to catch it,
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you can also look at it from another angle too. If Tower Guns came out today, and it was just a solo dev with me and my brother Mike doing the music, well, maybe I still would have been able to do okay for just supporting us. I might not have been able to grow a studio, but maybe it would have been just fine for being a solo or super small dev. We are still a small developer, but we are over a dozen people, so that's a lot of people to kind of care for. So that's a little different than someone who's just doing something as a hobby on the side, where you don't necessarily need to have it be this thing that sells bajillions of units for you all to continue to make another game. So there's that element too, is that you're not risking very much, especially if you are especially if you're young, if you don't have your entire livelihood invested into this industry. So I think the industry is going to continue to grow, and small developers are going to continue to find opportunities, but you definitely are going to need to look for it if you want to be at the beginning of a wave, like you were saying. But even still, just because there's a lot of games out there doesn't mean that it's not going, people still can be very successful with books too. It's just, you have to know your audience, build up an audience over time. You have to make stuff that people are going to want to read or play in this case.
Well, and if you're making stuff that you learned from and that you enjoyed making, then even if other people don't latch onto it, you're setting yourself up for success on your next project, you know? It's just,
Correct.
if
Or,
you start chasing the algorithm and you're getting miserable, where it's like, okay, that was actually a waste of time.
I wouldn't chase the algorithm. But like if you make one game, I wouldn't spend 10 years working on your dream game, basically.
Yeah.
But if you make one game in a year and you think it's really solid and you get 100 fans and they like your stuff, and then you make another game and you make it the next year and you get another 100 fans, like there's a rule, not a rule, but there's an old axiom that was, what was it called, 1,000 true fans. And that if you had 1,000 people who liked your stuff, then you could continue to make stuff because maybe that's all you need. But give them what they want, and what they want in theory is going to be the stuff you like making.
Yeah. And well, as long as you've established a pattern of only working on projects that you truly want to work on. If you that's where chasing the algorithm is dangerous, because you start making money making stuff you don't want to make, and all of a sudden you're now financially dependent on making things that make you miserable, and it's like, oh no.
Does that happen to you?
No, because I'm obstinate, and I'm like, I'm just gonna make what I want to make. And like, I started streaming, it was back in 2008, and I had a day job. And I started YouTube in 2011, and I still had my day job. And I only went kind of full time in like 2020. But it's been one of those things where it's like, I told people, like, you back me on PayPal and Patreon, it's gonna be me doing what I want to do. It's not, like,
that's great.
It's one of those things where it's like, I want people to support the arts, but if you want to be an art director, go to graphic design school and find a studio to work for and be an art director. Don't tell me what to do. I didn't build my own business to let somebody else be my boss, So
yeah, I think that's I mean, I think you've got the right attitude too, because I'm sure other YouTubers who have started to bend the algorithm and now they're stuck.
It's terrifying.
Yeah, especially if they start hiring a team, because now they're not just one person. They can't just live off of one amount of ad or Patreon or tip revenue. Now they have to support their crew of people.
Well, and that's something I really admire about what you've been doing, is that you've been able to scale up and take care of a team and still make games that, like I said, just seeing little animations that feel like something you would have done in Tower of Guns. It feels like kind of the soul, like artistically, is still there, and that's just really pleasing to see. It makes me happy.
Thanks, man. This has been a wacky year. 2024 was a really, really wacky year, and 2023 was rough too. So it hasn't been all perfect, but I'm relieved that we're actually able to get this game out there. Like I said, we've been kind of working on this game in between other projects for a long time, and the fact that we're actually able to dedicate the time that Battletrade deserves to be able to finish it up makes me feel really happy.
Well, I'm really glad to have you on the show, and I'm gonna try and get a view of what I've been working on, what I've accomplished, and then we'll do a quick outro.
Sounds good.
Well, I feel like I removed a lot of blocks this episode. I didn't exactly pay super good attention to which ones were above the silhouette of the building there, but I did have a fantastic time having Joe Mirabello join me here to talk about Terrible Posture Games and their upcoming release of Battle Train. Joe, any final thoughts or anything you'd like to say?
No, it's a pleasure, man. Thank you so much for having me. And if anyone listening to this or watching this would love to wishlist the game, it'd be really appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for making cool stuff and sharing them with me and my audience. I'm looking forward to hopefully seeing you again at PAX sometime. You may have noticed that this episode was mid-roll ad-free. That's thanks to Patreon patron Monate. Thanks, Monate. In lieu of that mid-roll ad, I will now present a haiku of my own devising. Mirrored glass reflects nothing at all in Minecraft. Not even our flaws. Until next time, y'all, this is Joe Hills from Nashville, Tennessee. Keep adventuring.